We got this at a garage sale for $1 and it sold for $2. No, $12. Sold for $12. That would be a bad sale.
Wow, $250, boom. $250, boom.
You're on like repeat these all the time.
I tell you all the time. If you find them, they sell. You find them, they sell. It's a nice set.
Hi, and welcome to our What Sold video for the week of October 27th through November 2nd, where we'll go over every item that we sold across multiple reselling platforms. Let's dive in.
All of them.
All right, the first thing that we sold, we got out of the Goodwill bins a couple years ago, maybe. It was a 1998 Hallmark Lionel, Pennsylvania locomotive Christmas ornament. It was not new, it was used. And we paid 92 cents for that. It sold for $10.39.
I'm not sure what trip we got that on.
It was to Fort Worth at some point. Next up was another one of the vintage 1990s Tiara women's like blinged out Christmas sweater vests, sweater vests. And we had mentioned that these sell really well on Etsy. Well, this is another one that sold on Etsy. We paid $4 for this at a garage sale and it sold for $32.99. Next up was a vintage 1980 Star Wars Lando Calrissian figure, vintage from like 1980. I think I said that. But now you know. And that we got at a garage sale for 25 cents. It sold for $2.99.
It was plus shipping.
Oh, $2.99 plus we used Mercari shipping. Yeah. I see. So a random Mercari sale there.
Very rare Mercari sale.
Not happening very often lately. I did read something that maybe they let their CEO go. And so I don't know if that means that...
Say it isn't so.
They're going to go back to the old fee structure or not. I don't know. I kind of hope they do because this one is not working for us for our sales.
I love not paying the fees.
Yeah, not paying the fees is great, but the buyers don't want to pay it.
Yeah, there are no sales.
And we lowered our prices to compensate. So still not working. Next up was a men's afro wig. It was like a Halloween level wig. We got this at a garage sale for $1 and it sold for $2. No, $12. Sold for $12. That would be a bad sale.
Wow, good business.
It sold for $12.
It was not a high quality.
No,
wig. It was actually
Party City level.
It was actually quite low quality.
It was bad. It was bad. Hope they weren't disappointed. Next up was a Gideon's Orange Pocket Bible. We sell these all the time.
I tell you all the time. If you find them, they sell. You find them, they sell. It's only a couple bucks, but it's a couple bucks.
Yeah. And we really don't have to redo the listings because we usually already have the listings.
They're so easy to list.
So we paid 24 cents for this at the thrift store. It sold for $9.59.
$250, boom. $250, boom.
You're on like repeat.
$250, boom.
Repeating everything.
$250, boom.
Next up was a Reese of New Haven. This was a menswear brand, I guess, one I've never heard of, but it was a 100% silk Westminster Regent maroon and navy striped necktie. It does sound really nice when you read it fancy like that. We got this out of the Goodwill bins, I think one of the Houston ones, and it sold for $18.99.
We got all the ties, I think, in the Houston bin.
Next up was a Paul Frederick men's brown Harris tweed wool sport coat. We got this from one of the Houston bins for $2.48.
That was a really, really cool coat. Is that the one that had the squares, or did we already do that one? No, we already
did that one.
Which one is this?
It is tweed, brown tweed. Anyway, this sold for $99.97. Next up was a 1995 Score Platinum Complete Team Set for the Chicago White Sox. This was Kevin's, and it sold for $17 on Poshmark.
It's a nice set.
Next up was a pair of the Lemoore Toddler Girls suede moto boots.
More toddlers with motorcycles.
Yeah, these...
It's bad parenting.
This came from the kids' shoe liquidation purchase, and I divided the price by the number of shoes I bought and listed all of them on our spreadsheet at a cost of $9.10. So this particular style of shoes, it always... seems like we didn't make any money, but really, it's all working out. Anyway, these sold for $23.99. And according to our spreadsheet math, we netted a whopping 5 cents on that.
Well worth all the time and effort.
Next up was a vintage Michael Gerald men's 80s and 90s geometric pullover dad sweater. This had the look of a Cosby sweater.
In the old day, I would have called it a Cosby sweater, but not now because...
Technically, a Cosby sweater is the brand Coogie, but it had that Coogie look to it. And I don't know if it's appropriate to say Cosby sweater anymore, but I just said it.
I just choose not to say it anymore. I choose not to use... He's like Voldemort. I don't say his name.
That's true. But...
He shall not be named.
Okay, so it is a he who shall not be named style sweater. And that we purchased at a garage sale for $3. It sold for $20.
You maybe could say Huxtable sweater.
Yeah, that's better.
It's
Dr. Cliff Huxtable.
It's a safety.
Once you've seen the documentary that was recently on, I don't know what platform it was on, but once you see that and then it talks about like how he wove in his weird things that he did into the character of Cliff Huxtable, with him like seeing patients in the basement and stuff like without a nurse present, it does totally change your perception even of the Cosby Show, which is so sad because I loved that show so much, but it does kind of ruin it for you. So anyway.
Not for me. I didn't watch that show.
Oh, I loved that show. All right, next was an Oneida stainless steel Geneva single dinner fork. We got this out of a thrift store flatware bag for 30 cents. It sold for $15.19.
We made the best profit ever.
$7.77. It was a jackpot, one might say.
That's right.
Next up was a Sears mustard color yellow full-size thermal blanket, like the old school kind with the satin trim. We got this at an estate sale for $6. It sold for $39.99.
We had that one a while.
We did. Did have a lot of interest on it.
Mm-hmm.
Next up was a chemistry textbook by Karen Timberlake from 1976. We got this at a thrift store for $1.08, and it sold for $18.39. Next up was a vintage Hoax brand men's blue velour velvet short sleeve Hawaiian shirt. So it was a Hawaiian shirt, but it was made of velour. It was really interesting.
That's the
looking.
shirt that I wanted so bad.
Yeah,
it was too big for me, but I loved that shirt.
We got that out of a Goodwill blue box that was marketed as vintage Y2K clothing, I think. We paid $4.20 and it sold for $32.99 on Etsy. Next up was a vintage 1995 Mr. Christmas Disney Mickey Mouse lighted animated tree topper. It was brand new in the box, sealed. Mr. Christmas is a great brand to be on the lookout for. Some of it will sell for really high. We got this at a garage sale for $15, which is paying up for us, if you know. But it sold for $149.98.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a good one. I remember I picked it up and he was like, "Did you know this was $15?" I was like,
to me, $15 is like,
well, it is. I mean, you don't want to just dump
willy-nilly,
$15
but
into
she
something
looked
that's
it
not
up
gonna
and it was
sell.
worth it. So yeah.
Yeah. Next up was a men's yellow geometric print, 100% silk and alligator look. Wasn't really alligator.
It looked like
pair of
suspenders.
suspenders. Yeah, they were suspenders. Shut up. Oh my God. You're the worst. We got this from, I think, which bins did we, was this San Antonio?
I think I picked that up in Fort Worth.
Oh.
I think it was, or you might have picked, it was Fort Worth, I think, though.
So we got that at one of the bins.
The last
on
one.
our bins trip. And we paid $1.72. It sold for $20.
Although we could have gotten it in Houston.
Yeah.
It was either Houston or Fort Worth.
Yeah. Next up was a vintage Sony Mavica. This is the Mavica cameras, I think, are all cameras that use like a 3.5 millimeter floppy disk. Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
3.5 millimeter floppy disk. Anyway, it was a camera, but we did not have any way to charge it or test it, so we listed it as untested. We got this at a garage sale where I bought a huge box full of vintage camera equipment. This is one of the last things to sell.
So basically, it was just a free camera.
Yeah. So we paid 22 cents for this because I had paid like a $10 for the box and there was tons of stuff in there. It sold for $19.99.
I wouldn't pick those up. They don't seem to be
usually
worth
the
very
Mavica
much.
ones aren't worth a lot.
Well, and this is a Sony, and it still wasn't worth much.
Right.
So
Nobody wants those floppy disk
I would
cameras.
avoid those.
Next up was a Disney pillow pet. It was one of the small ones, and it was of Tomater. This is the first pillow pet that we have picked up that has taken literally forever to sell.
Normally, the pillow pets sell really quickly, but
Yeah, we do really well with pillow pets if they're in good condition.
I
This
guess
one,
the Disney ones maybe.
I don't know, maybe this one was just overproduced or nobody wants.
That's what I'm saying. The
Maybe
Disney
nobody
ones,
likes
there might have been
Tomater.
too many. No, I think people like Tomater.
So we paid $1.18 for that at the Goodwill bins. We got that when we were playing Bins Bingo.
Yeah,
That's how
it's
long
been-
ago it was.
A long time.
It sold for $11 only on eBay. So we just wanted to get rid of it.
We still somehow made a profit on it, so that's good.
Next up was a 5-ounce Elmer's non-toxic washable pink color glue for like slimes or crafts. We got some free stuff from somebody who was giving away a bunch of free kid stuff, so we had no cost on it. It sold for $9.59. Next up was an H&M divided women's brown pleated flare mini skirt. It had like a schoolgirl look to it, so I put that on the title. This was gifted to us to sell. We had no cost, and it sold for $17 on Poshmark. Next up was a vintage 1966 Snoopy replacement shirt and jacket for some kind of Snoopy doll that was vintage, and I identified it through Google Lens. This was gifted to us. It came actually out of the Barbie bag, so we had no cost. It sold for $15.99. Next up was a package of Fujifilm Instax Mini Instant Film. It was new, but the package had seen better days. This was found in one of the Goodwill bins for $1, and it sold for $13.58.
That was sent in Waco.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. Next up was a vintage 1999 board game or family game called Sequence Dice. It was brand new and sealed, which is why we picked it up out of the Goodwill bins. We paid 92 cents, but this thing we have had forever, and it finally sold for $6 plus shipping, of course, on Poshmark.
Like 4 years.
So we didn't really
forever.
make a lot on that, but we
No.
were just ready to get rid of it.
We just got rid of it.
Yeah,
Cleared some space.
we always, every year in January, we always do inventory and take stuff out that's been listed for either it has to meet 2 criteria. It has to have been listed for quite a while and be at the threshold where we won't make any money on it if we lower it anymore. Because when we do our...
It's a funny story.
Because when we do our inventory, we lower the price on stuff that's been listed for more than a year or, seems like it has had no interest. And if we're going to lower it and be in the negative, we're obviously just going to take it out of our inventory.
Yeah.
So anyway, next up was an OEM HP60 inkjet print cartridge. It was new and sealed. This was gifted to us from friends and family, and it sold for $10.25.
And it was expired, of course.
Yeah, they'll still sell though. Next up was a Black & Decker Type 2 cordless
Like
drill
the diabetes.
driver, battery, and charger. And we got that at a garage sale for $5. It sold for $49.98.
That was from that fantastic sale where we got the Sears wheels and the
Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland books. It was a great
It
sale.
was a good sale. Next up was a vintage 100-piece lot of Barbie Mattel So Much To Do accessories. There were a lot, and most of them were still affixed. They weren't popped out of the plastic. What do you call that? Like when it's still, and you have to break it off the
I
plastic?
don't know what that's called.
Anyway, you'll see in the picture what I mean over here, I think. But they were brand new, they had never been played with. We got that at an estate sale for $1.50, and it sold for $19. Next up was a pair of Livy and Luca toddler size Mary Jane shoes. This is a brand to be on the lookout for. These did have, the particular pair we picked up had flaws. We got these at
one of the
Houston bins for $2.03. They sold really fast for $19.99.
You picked those up just because they were cute.
Next up was a 1995 Mattel Indian Barbie, and it came from the Dolls of the World collection. It was in really good condition. I think she might have been missing her shoes or something, but otherwise she was pretty flawless. Somebody had also unbraided her hair. But we got this from the Waco bins for $1.09. It sold for $29.99.
I actually don't think that's the Waco, but I think that might be Dallas.
Oh, okay. Next up was a vintage 1980s Plus Mark 20-pack of Christmas cards. I put that they had cute forest animals on it, which I think is the thing that made it sell fast. They were new in the box. We got these at the Goodwill bins for $1.09, and they sold for $19.99. Next up was a ceramic painted red Christmas holiday Santa Claus napkin holder. We found this in the Goodwill bins for 92 cents, and it sold for $13. Next up was an HP webcam. It was new in the package. We got this at a garage sale for $5, and it sold for $23.99. Next up was a lot of 2 men's health magazines. We got these from someone on Nextdoor who was giving away magazines for free, and these sold for $8 plus shipping on Poshmark. And the same buyer also bought a lot of 5 food and wine magazines, and those were also free, and we sold those for $12 plus shipping on Poshmark. Next up was an H&M men's black plaid flannel long sleeve shirt. This was gifted to us to sell, and it also sold for $14 on Poshmark. So that's 3 Poshmark sales right there together. And if you know, we have been using Posh Sidekick, and I attribute that completely to increasing our Poshmark sales, because Posh Sidekick is an automation tool that will take care of all of the annoying stuff that you have to do on Poshmark to get sales.
Minutia.
Like following other sellers, sharing your closet. Sharing your closet is the worst. And it'll even send offers for you. And it has a lot of other tools and tricks to be able to really maximize your use of the Poshmark app. It's just $29.99 a month. And to me, that's totally worth it, because it's less than $1 a day to not have to worry with doing all of the sharing and liking and everything. My closet has over 1,000 things in it, so that would take me a really long time. So if you are looking for a way to increase your Poshmark sales, there's a link in the description box below where you can get a 7-day free trial of Posh Sidekick. Plus, if you like it, you can use our coupon code TheNinasJewels10 to get an additional 10% off of your subscription. All right, now that we talked about that, let's move on. The next thing on our list, this was a lot of 27 drama movies on VHS. Some of them were new, some of them were used. We bundled them all together, but we were all in on our cost for these for $5.21. We got most of them for free, which I think is probably why we were like, oh, we'll just leave it in our store. But we could only end up selling these for $23.19. So we actually technically lost money on them. We lost $4.34. So that turned out to be a bad deal. But we did figure out that there's a better way to sell VHS.
Now we just bundle them all together. If it's books, if it's VHS, CDs, anything like that, bundle a whole bin full of them together or 2, and she puts them on Facebook Marketplace. They sell within the week almost pretty much every time.
Yeah.
And we make more.
We do.
There's no fees. So it's like $10, $20. I mean, that's way better. And then you just take them and give them to somebody, and you don't have to ship them, pack them, take pictures of them other than like one big picture. Oh, it's so much easier.
Definitely the way to go. So I'm telling you, we'll probably have a major media purge when we do inventory this year, and just end up selling most of that locally. Okay, next up was a lot of 7 1990s Barbie Fashion Avenue clothes. They did need some TLC. We were gifted these to sell, and they sold for $13.59. Next up was a vintage 1990 Ken doll pair of Reebok shoe covers.
They're pretty cool.
They were. I was surprised they weren't worth a lot.
I know.
We got them for free from family, and they sold for $7.98. They were probably mass produced. Yeah. Next up was a package of Philips multicolor Christmas lights, new in the box. We got these when we purchased all those mystery boxes on Facebook Marketplace. Our cost on these was $6.88.
Which is high.
And they sold for $19.99.
And we still somehow made a few bucks on them.
Yep. Next up was it was really cute, and that's why I picked it up. It was like probably a promotional giveaway. But it was called a Sally cell phone plush toy. It was brand new in the package. I just thought, this is so cute. Somebody's going to want this. We got it at a garage sale for $2. It sold for $14.98.
I find it odd that somebody bought that. It was just when I was shipping it, I'm like, why? Why did they buy it? I guess, but I don't know. It feels like that somebody specifically be looking for.
Phone.
No. Well, you know, babies now have cell phones, so why not?
They do. They're like, wah, wah. All right. Next up was a Lane Bryant Lane collection black and white asymmetric skirt. This was gifted to us to sell, and it sold for $15. Next up was a set of 2 University of Texas Longhorns frosted glasses from 1965. These we got from the North Austin bins for $2.06, and they sold for $33.98.
Those things looked really cool. They did.
Next up was a Nike Manny Pacquiao ThermaFit gray print full zip Pac-Man. That's his nickname. It was a hoodie. Okay, so we got this from one of the Houston bins for $2.48, and it sold for $84.99. That was a good one. Next up was a lot of 3 Hasbro mini Ugly dolls. We had 2 of the same one and then 1 additional one. We lotted them all together. We had gotten these at, I think, the Waco bins for $1. They sold for $14.38.
That'd be Waco.
Next up was a 30th anniversary edition of Roots, the complete series.
Or as that Australian guy would say, Roots.
This was used but complete. We got this also, I think, at the Waco bins for $1.10.
No, that was Fort Worth.
We got that at the Fort Worth bins for $1.10, and it sold for $13.62. Next up was a lot of 6 issues of Budget Travel magazine. We got these from the next door pickup that we did for free. They sold for $14.39 on Mercari. Next up was a Zoo York boys aqua striped graphic t-shirt. It was new with the tags. We found this in a storage unit for 24 cents, and it sold for $13.58 on eBay.
We had that thing forever. That was our first ever storage unit that we purchased.
It was new with tags, though. I couldn't not list it.
No. We should have listed it. We made $5 on it, but it took forever.
It did. Next up was a Loggins and Messina vintage 1972 vinyl album. We got this at the thrift store for 35 cents, and it sold for $14.99. Next up was a 1989 all-trade professional halogen light manual. I would have never thought this would have sold.
Why someone would need a manual for a light? There's so few parts to a light.
Yeah, no, it might be somebody who. That's why we always list manuals, because the weirdest stuff sells. So this was gifted to us to sell. We had no cost. It sold for $9.99. Next up was a 70-piece mixed lot of vintage to modern Barbie, Ken, Skipper, and Clone single doll shoes. That's a very specific lot.
There was a lot of shoes.
This was gifted to us, so we had no cost, and it sold for $12. Next up was an Audubon Society butterfly gardening VHS, new and sealed. We got this at the thrift store for 13 cents, and it sold for $14.99. Next up was a vintage Hanna-Barbera Scooby-Doo Christmas gift wrap. And we got that at a garage sale for $1. It sold for $15. Next up was a vintage 1968 Barbie fold-out vinyl family house. It was complete. Actually, I don't know if it was complete, but it had most of the furniture with it. But it did have some issues. Yeah. This was gifted to us to sell. We had no cost, and it sold for $67.97.
Actually, pieces of that were falling off.
Yeah, it was
really brittle plastic. It was old.
Yeah, from 1960.
I mean, it's older than me, and I'm old.
Yeah, you are. Next up was a soft surroundings women's olive maxi dress. We got this at the Goodwill bins for $2.03, and it sold for $35. Good brand to look out for. Next up was a Ryan Bingham, who I think is a country and western artist.
I think so. He could just be one of those folksy guitar people.
So anyway, we found like some of his merch. It was a t-shirt. It did have some wash wear on it. We got that at one of the Houston bins for $1.73, and it sold for $15. Next up was a women's white cotton 18-inch full slip. It was vintage. It had stains on it. I think it was probably like really vintage, but I couldn't tell for sure. So I didn't really list a year. I just said vintage. We got this from the Dallas Goodwill bins for 90 cents, and it sold for $21.58.
I think it was vintage because all the ones that were with it were vintage.
Yeah, that's a good thing to pick up. Vintage slips. You can't sell used underwear on eBay or used socks, but vintage bras, vintage slips, vintage hosiery, those have to be new too. Any kind of vintage wear like that will sell really well on eBay, I've found. Next up was a 7x7 stereolithograph of, it was called Butte Marine, I guess. It was something in French, I don't know. But this was gifted to us for free on a cruise from the art gallery.
We always go to the art shows and they'll give you a free little thing of art. If you
Usually they have like some kind of scavenger hunt or something in the art gallery on a cruise. And if you go participate in it, they're trying to sell you art. But if you participate in it, they give you a free piece of art, and then we always sell it.
We always sell them. We always make about the same. Like
we do.
What do we make on that? $6?
They usually sell. They're usually pretty nice prints and stuff. So this was free, and it sold for $14.38. Next up was a vintage book from 1961. It was called The Jack LaLanne Way to Vibrant Good Health. It was an exercise book.
Jack LaLanne.
Jack LaLanne. So he mispronounces his name. Because look at it. So that we got at the thrift store for 51 cents.
Piled on a dead guy.
And it sold for $34.99. All right, the last thing on our list was a New Testament with Psalms. It was a Gideon Bible from 2013.
What?
We got this at the thrift store for 51 cents. It sold for $9.99.
Boom, another $3.
So that wraps up all of our sales for this week. Let's go over the total. We sold 58 items.
That is high.
For an average sale price of $23.68.
That is average.
We sold $1,373.34 in total, and that made for a net profit of $718.42.
We hit the $100 a day.
All right.
We just need to keep doing that forever and make it slowly.
Exactly.
But 700, we did our 700. I'm so happy. Got $100 a day.
So that wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let us and YouTube know by hitting that like button. If you're not already subscribed, we would really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. And we will catch you on the flip side.